Hi everyone, I'm going to do the next chapter in Goodbye to Guilt by Gerald G Jampolsky, and it's called Love is Listening. Now, during this chapter, Gerald explains that he had a time when he was going to New Zealand lecturing, and he had an opportunity to go to an hospice, where obviously hospices and it was in general hospital is where people go who are critically ill and are facing death. He was introduced to a volunteer, and on her lapel it had a badge on with a name on and the word listener. And her role was literally just to go around and listen to people and not to advise or to offer any kind of constructive criticism to them. It was just unconditional love and total acceptance just by listening. Now, do you ever take the time just to listen to people, or as Gerald says, that sometimes when we're actually listening to people, usually we switch off part way through the conversation because we're thinking about what we need to answer with. So it's about being able to just switch off. Now, when I'm coaching, obviously, it's a skill we have to learn, but we have to be able to switch off, listen to what the person's saying, and then be able to act and answer and ask the correct questions. So it is literally, it's not about, and over the years, obviously, I have listened to lots and lots of people. And when we are coaching, one of the things is that we listen, and it's up to the person to decide on where they want to take their life. It's not for you to tell them what to do with their life, but it's for it as a coach. It is our opportunity or our job to actually allow people to discuss what they're feeling, and for us to be able to help them along the journey to see and explore the way they want to go. So this is where listening comes in, because we listen for the words which will identify if it's a limiting belief or anything like that. So getting back to Gerald's book, he says that we stop listening and start to think more about the response we're going to give. Listening with undivided attention is what we call unconditional love, and it's the greatest gift we can give to anybody. Okay, so we've got the voice of love. So to give the gift of listening to others, we first have to learn to listen to the voice of love, which is within ourselves. So if you actually take the time to sit and just relax and literally switch off from your thought patterns and things like that, and just sit, that your voice of love will come through. Okay, so if you can shut the ego down, and I'm sure this is where this is going to go, it's going to be difficult for most people, as previously discussed. When we're making decisions, we have voices talking, the ego voice and the love voice. Okay, the voice of love is nothing to do with past experiences, intellectual or rational mind. It comes from the core of love. So taking time to still the mind in order to hear the voice of love and the inner guidance, we have to learn to still our mind. Okay, so to make sure that we get that voice of love, we have got to just literally sit and listen and be still. Gerald says we have to have faith and be willing to ask for help from God. Okay, so yeah, as I've explained before, God does not mean that we are actually going all religious or spiritual. It just means that we are giving love out to the universe or whoever we want to believe that we are sending it out to. Okay, and expect our requests to be answered. So when we ask for help, we expect our requests to be answered. Our minds are very undisciplined. Thousands of uncontrolled thoughts recycling our past race through our mind each minute. Okay, one of the main barriers is to stilling our mind is the ego's attraction to fear and guilt. And I know I struggle with this sometimes, because I literally, and I'm not as bad as I was a long time, a few years ago. If I would actually sit still, ready to still my mind, these feelings would come up here, and I would get this overwhelm of emotion coming through me, and I could not deal with that emotion. So I'd literally get up and start walking around. Okay, and it would feel really uncomfortable. What I would say is, with me, there was a lot of emotion in here which I hadn't dealt with, which needed clearing. And now when I've been able to clear that emotion isn't actually there. I find it easier to be able to sit still and to still my mind. So if you are having that problem of sitting still and it's the overwhelm of emotion, possibly work with a coach and see what emotion it is, what you're dealing with, so then you can actually hopefully clear that, which will then allow you to be able to to still your mind. Okay, if that makes sense. Gerald says, if we have to perceive the world differently, it is imperative that we learn to retrain our mind and to realise we can control our thoughts. He says a disciplined mind is a free mind, and our goal is freedom. If we are dominated by our ego, we will be unable to be free ourselves. We'll be unable to be free, and we won't be able to release ourselves from guilt or fear. Ways to still the mind are through meditation and prayer, and use of mental imagery through active imagination. Gerald explains a simple way of looking at these in the following way. So a meditation can be viewed as a focused concentration that allows for us self-exploration and increased self-awareness that occur when the mind becomes still. Some people experience meditation as a doorway to prayer. Now, like I explained, when I used to try to sit down and do the meditation, yes, it does give you that chance to be self-aware, but what I found was that this emotion was like an overwhelm for me. Now, you can learn to sit and just continue to sit and not run away from the overwhelm, but I really did struggle with that, and it wasn't until I'd actually worked with a coach and able to explore what those feelings were that then I was able to sit in that stillness. Now, really, the meditation should have been able to help me, but because I didn't like that overwhelming feeling, I could not physically sit still to be able to do it. Okay, but now it is coming easier and better for me. So meditation is a doorway to prayer. Prayer can be thought of as focused concentration and communication with God. On the lowest level, prayer is asking, and on the highest level, it is listening, loving and expressing gratitude to God. If the only prayer you say in your whole life is thank you, that would be enough. In both prayer and meditation, there is a decision to go inward and not be affected by the noise of the external world. So again, when I was going inward, doing my meditation, obviously the ego was actually bringing all these emotions up, and I wasn't able to switch it off. Okay, so that is where I was really struggling. Some people won't struggle, some people will be able to keep it under control, but it was the feelings that I actually struggled with and the overwhelm. So Gerald goes on to say, there is a saying, a busy mind is a sick mind, a slow mind is an healthy mind, and a still mind is a divine mind. He believes a priority is having a still mind in the morning and when we wake up, and in the evening before we go to bed. So meditating in the morning, which I do now, when I get up in the morning, I'll literally do half an hour to an hour of sitting still and just being at one and meditating. And then in the evening, just before I go to bed. He says there's only one goal, is to have peace with God, detaching himself from the chaotic thoughts that race through his mind. If quieting your mind is new to you, Gerald says start with just 3 minutes in the morning and 3 minutes in the evening, and be patient with yourself. Don't judge yourself and don't question yourself. We have to learn to listen to our inner voice, the voice of love, laying aside our rational, analytical and deductive mind and being led by the love centre in our heart. Our ego does not want to make this easy for us and tries to trick us and persuade us that making decisions is foolish. Now, in 1979, Gerald had a powerful experience as a result of trying to listen to his inner voice. He was scheduled to go and do a lecture in Israel on May the 1st, and he was looking forward to doing some sightseeing before. 2 weeks before he was leaving, his inner voice instructed him to change his ticket and to go on May the 3rd and go to Egypt. He had no friends in Egypt, and the idea seemed ridiculous. However, his guidance was insistent. He finally exchanged his tickets for a flight to Cairo. He did not tell anyone other than one friend about the plan, because he thought people may think he was mad. Gerald made a flip remark, "I don't know what I'm supposed to do there. Maybe I'm supposed to see someone famous whom I admire, like Mrs. Jian Sadat." In those days, you could not fly directly from Israel to Egypt, so he had to stop in Greece first. En route from Athens, he went to Cairo. He was reading the Airline magazine. There was a story about a Dr. Shah Bender, head of the Egyptian Cancer Institute. It occurred to him that since he didn't know why he was going or why he was making the trip, maybe it was to meet Dr. Shah Bender. The next morning, he rang him. After much difficulty, he replied, "I'm sorry, but since today is Friday, I cannot see you. It's like a Sunday in the US." And he was going to the country with his family. But then he gave a brief pause and he said, "Get your taxi straight away. I'll see you for 10 minutes. They met at his residence and there was an instant rapport between the two of them. He invited Gerald to join them on the family visit to the country. To Gerald's surprise, when they reached the destination, it turned out to be an informal party that included most of Mr. Sadat's cabinet. He met the Minister of Health, who invited him to his office the following day. During the visit, he said he wanted Gerald to meet Mrs. Sadat. The 5-minute talk with Mrs. Sadat turned into an hour, and they communicated regular and ended up lecturing together. When he returned home, he reflected on his trip and realised that it was not just the experience, that none would have happened if he had not listened to his inner voice. So actually taking that time to listen to his voice and listening to and being told what he needs to do actually helped him develop those connections with Mrs. Sadat. And maybe if we do take time to actually sit and listen and take in with the voices there, and it does advise us, and I'm not saying that it's easy, because I struggle and the ego does kick in, and I think Gerald does explain that as well, that he still had the issues. He explains that in the book. So the other one is fear of death. The greatest threat from our ego self holds over us is the fear of death. It causes interference with listening. As long as we identify with our body, fear and guilt will be lodged somewhere in our mind. Guilt always results in some way in an attack, either on ourselves or on others. Guilt reinforces the ego's belief in the past, present and the future. A time sequence in which the death of the body is equated with the end of life. Our ego keeps us preoccupied with efforts to control others and the world around us in an attempt to deny our fear of death. In love's belief system, death is considered to be the transition from form to formlessness. In formlessness state, life and love are the same and continue forever. They do not come to an end when the costume we call our body is laid aside. When we become guilt-free, we are living each instant as if it was timeless, with the knowledge that we are love. This is what Gerald says in the book. We are life and we are eternal because God is eternal. When we are free of guilt, there is no fear of death. Now, I must admit, many years ago, I did have a fear of death. Now, I don't. I actually believe that we all are on our journey, and it's a case of we never know when our path is up, and it's about living life and enjoying life for the best we can as we are here, okay, and making the most of it. There's a story in the book. I will see if I can find it, and it's called. It's Ray's bed life instructions, okay? So this is his bed life of instructions. His sister actually wrote to Gerald and told him about Ray and how Gerald had helped Ray. But this story is: the day will come when my body will lie upon a white sheet, neatly tucked under four corners of a mattress located in an hospital, busily occupied with the living and the dying. At a certain moment, a doctor will determine that my brain has ceased to function and that for all intents and purposes my life has stopped. When this happens, do not attempt to instill artificial life into my body by the use of a machine. And don't call this my deathbed. Let it be called the bed of life. And let my body be taken from it to help others live fuller lives. Give me sight to the man who has never seen a sunrise, a baby's face, or love in the eyes of a woman. Give my heart to a person whose own heart has caused nothing but endless days of pain. Give my blood to the teenager who was pulled from the wreckage of his car, so that he might live to see his grandchildren play. Give my kidneys to one who depends on a machine to exist from week to week. Take my bones, every muscle, every fibre and nerve in my body, and find a way to make a crippled child walk. Explore every corner of my brain and take my cells if necessary and let them grow so that someday a speechless boy will shout at the crack of a bat and a deaf girl will hear the sound of rain against the window. Burn what is left of me and scatter the ashes in the wind and help the flowers grow. If you must bury something, let it be my faults and my weaknesses and all prejudice against my fellow men. Give my sins to the devil, my soul to God, and if by chance you wish to remember me, do it with a kind deed or word to someone who needs you. If you do all I have asked, I will live forever. This is my wish, Ray. It's quite moving, that, isn't it? So resistance to hearing, oh gosh, golly gosh. Okay, I'm sorry about that. A bit of overwhelm reading that poem, but we are back. Okay, so resistance to hearing the inner voice. The ego increases our doubt by constantly raising questions such as, are you really sure that the voice you are hearing is the voice of love? The ego tries to convince you not to take the risk of listening to God's love and turning your will over to it because you may not like the answer. Gerald says his ego still taunts him these days and plays games with him, leaving him with conflict and uncertainty. But the more willing he is to trust in the voice of love, the more peace and confidence he experiences. If he gets caught up in the rationalisation, he will go along with God's will. If he agrees to go along with mine, that means he's already determined what answers he wants. You have to go to God with empty hands and not be invested in any kind of specific answer. He goes on to say that it is when he lets his ego goes wild because its survival depends on getting answers, that it will be in his own way. It is when he's attached to the outcome that his ego interferes with hearing his own inner voice. It's not necessary to let go of the anger and the guilt and unforgiving thoughts before we listen to our inner teacher. It's having a willingness, however partial, to turn our problems over to our inner guides that makes it possible for misconceptions to be transformed. Gerald goes on to say that when we become willing to listen only to the voice of love, we can begin to recognise that our assignments here on earth is to be a messenger to God who offers unconditional love to everyone. Before we can be a messenger for God, we have to accept the messages for ourselves. Light of love and light of Christ. Gerald said about 10 years ago, if he had picked up a book about light of the world and love, he would have put the book right down in disgust. He had a reluctance to actually mention this in the book, thinking that many will have the same reaction. But yet to learn we are the light of the world, and somewhat this is blocked by guilt and fear. The light of love, Christ's light, can be looked upon light radiating from the centre of the heart of God. It radiates to and through us and to all others, and we can look upon the light as the creative source of energy for the universe. We are all here to act as substations of light to clear the darkness of guilt, fear and separation. We heal our minds when we join each other as one by seeing only the light of love in others and ourselves. In healing, we recognise that our minds are joined, that there is one universal mind. Gerald says he finds the following analogy helpful in understanding the universal mind. So if you close your eyes, and then I want you to imagine that the whole universe is made up of water. Now drop a pebble in the water and seeing a ripple go out, which affects every particle of water, and then the ripple will come back to you. Now in a similar way, the love out of your heart can be passed on to others, which will then affect their mind and then returns to you. And it'll remove doubt about yourself and about who we are. Now there's a powerful passage that he talks about in the book, and I did have the page and I've obviously lost it. So it goes on and it says, the sight of Christ is all there is to see. The song of Christ is all there is to hear. The hand of Christ is all there is to hold. There is no journey but to walk with him. There must be doubt before there can be conflict, and every doubt must be about yourself. Christ has no doubt, and from his certainty his quiet comes. He will exchange his certainty for all your doubts if you agree that he is one with you, and that this oneness is endless, timeless, and within your grasp because your hands are his. He is within you, yet he walks beside you and before you, leading the way that he must go find himself. Complete his quietness comes your certainty, and where is doubt when certainty has come? And that's from the Course of Miracles. So breaking the resistance. There are many different spiritual pathways with a teacher living or dead. Gerald said he struggled to feel close, to have a personal relationship with his inner teacher and God, and he was resistant to gurus, master teachers, particularly if its name was Jesus. He felt he needed to let go of his old ideas about Jesus and tried to become open-minded about who he was and what he represented. He was not prepared to what happened next, but to his surprise, he began to develop a personal relationship with Jesus. He began to see him as a messenger of God, teaching the world forgiveness and love, and also an older brother or master teacher who demonstrated it was possible to let go of complete judgment, guilt, everything valued in the world except God's love. Most importantly to Gerald, he demonstrated death was not real. Life is eternal, and minds can communicate with each other forever, even after the body is laid aside. He began to feel his presence on him, and at first was concerned about what other people might think of him, so he kept it a secret. But one day he was meditating at St Johns Hopkins Medical School before doing a lecture. He asked if he could use the word God or Christ in the lecture to his inner voice, and the inner voice answered was a definite no. He finished the lecture, which was greatly received, and when he was escorted out of the building, he bumped into a large statue of Jesus. He asked what Jesus was doing here, and he was told he was leaving out of the Christ entrance. This experience symbolised to him that Christ's light and the light of love is always with him. He says he now is less concerned what people think about this, and is linked to Jesus, and now has a picture in his living room. He goes on to say, we do not have to have a relationship with Jesus or to see him to heal relationships. We've just got to have faith and trust. And if the thought system of love and faith can be thought of a trusting in God and have an inner certainty of knowing without doubt that we are safe. Trusting that God loves us and gives us a strength rather than a limited, meagre strength of our personality self. Now he goes on to suggesting about keep still in the mind. I'll read one out, but there are others which are going to be available in my group. which is Transforming Your Lives on Facebook. And he says, still in your mind, you're going to sit and you're going to do I am relaxed. This is just one I'm reading out. He asks you to close your eyes, go inside yourself and find a quiet place where you feel peaceful. As you breathe in, say the words I am silently to yourself. As you breathe out, say the words relaxed silently to yourself. Keep as your single focus, I am relaxed. And that's the end of that chapter today. So the book is Goodbye to Guilt by Gerald G Jampolsky. I apologise for the delay in getting this one out. The book actually, whilst I've been reading it and working through it, did bring up all sorts of emotions I had to deal with. So it's actually stopped me from being able to do the videos as quick as I would like to do. But my aim is to get the book, to finish the book and let you understand what it's about, and maybe you will be interested in getting the book. I do not know this gentleman, but I have had this book since 2018, but the work when I've been reading it and things I've actually cleared have been really big, so I would recommend it. I hope you enjoyed that chapter. I will be doing another video later for the next chapter, and I will hopefully see you soon. Take care.